Have you ever eaten a muffin that not only didn't spike your blood sugar but actually lowered it? Sounds crazy, right? But this isn't fiction. On a quiet street in Charlotte, North Carolina, a man named Mark Reynolds made an incredible discovery. Living with diabetes for over a decade, Mark had always been meticulous about what he ate. But one ordinary evening, while experimenting in his small kitchen, he stumbled upon a muffin recipe that changed the game. And the result? His blood sugar dropped 25 milligrams per deciliter within just 2 hours after eating it. But how is this possible? How could a muffin, traditionally seen as a diabetic's worst enemy, actually lower blood sugar instead of sending it skyrocketing? Let's go back in time to the moment Mark stepped into his kitchen, decided to try a special recipe, and unknowingly discovered a way to control blood sugar in a way you might never have imagined. 1. The blood sugar lowering muffin recipe. Mark Reynolds was never much of a cook. In fact, before being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 10 years ago, he hardly paid attention to what he ate. Muffins, pancakes, and French toast used to be his breakfast staples, until his doctor warned him that if he didn't control his blood sugar, he would face serious complications. From that point on, Mark had to scrutinize every ingredient he consumed. He tried a low-carb diet, experimented with intermittent fasting, and even cut out sweets entirely at one point. But one day, while searching for alternative recipes online, Mark had a thought. Was there a way to enjoy a muffin without spiking his blood sugar? A new recipe, a surprising outcome. Mark began experimenting in his small kitchen in Charlotte, North Carolina. He knew that starch was the enemy, so traditional flour was off the table. After extensive research, he discovered 2 key ingredients that allowed him to create a muffin that was not only low-carb but also packed with fiber. Golden flaxseed, an excellent source of fiber that slows down sugar absorption and aids digestion. 1 tablespoon of golden flaxseed contains 4 grams of carbohydrates, but all of it is fiber, meaning its glycemic index, GI, is nearly 0. Lupin flour, made from lupin beans. This flour is low in carbs but rich in protein and fiber. 1/3 cup of lupin flour contains 14 grams of carbohydrates, but 12 grams of that is fiber, making its actual starch content extremely low. Besides these 2 primary ingredients, Mark needed a few additional components to give the muffin a soft, fluffy texture and a pleasant taste. Heavy whipping cream keeps the muffin moist, replacing regular milk that could spike blood sugar. Baking powder helps the muffin rise and stay fluffy. Eggs provide protein and structure. Sugar-free sweetener ensures sweetness without affecting blood sugar levels. After mixing everything together, Mark poured the batter into a small ramekin and microwaved it for 90 seconds. When he took it out, the muffin was perfectly risen with a golden brown color. But the real test was yet to come. How would it affect his blood sugar? Mark took out his glucose meter and checked his pre-meal blood sugar, 105 milligrams per deciliter. He took a sip of black coffee, bit into the soft muffin, and tasted the subtle richness of flaxseed and the nutty aroma of lupin flour. 1 hour later, he checked again, 93 milligrams per deciliter. 2 hours later, 80 milligrams per deciliter. Mark was stunned. He couldn't believe that a muffin could lower his blood sugar instead of spiking it. Was his body playing tricks on him? Or was there something truly unique about this recipe? 2. Blood sugar test results. Mark Reynolds stared at his glucose meter on the kitchen counter. Full of doubt, he had just finished his meal, a small muffin made from lupin flour and golden flaxseed, along with a cup of black coffee. This wasn't the first time he had baked muffins, but this time felt different. He had used ingredients that contained virtually no digestible starch. Yet a strange thought crept into his mind. Could this muffin really help regulate blood sugar? Or was it just another so-called keto-friendly product that didn't live up to its claims? Before eating, Mark had checked his blood sugar. He no longer fully trusted his Dexcom Stelo continuous glucose monitor because it often displayed readings about 15 milligrams per deciliter higher than his actual levels. When Dexcom showed 120 milligrams per deciliter, Mark quickly grabbed his trusted fingerstick glucose meter. His actual reading was 105 milligrams per deciliter. And so, the experiment began. First hour, a noticeable change. Mark slowly nibbled on his muffin. It was soft, mildly nutty, with a hint of richness from the cream and eggs. Not too sweet, but satisfying. A simple, sugar-free, starch-free meal that still felt indulgent. About an hour after eating, he noticed something unusual. He felt completely fine. No sluggishness, no blood sugar crash, like he usually experienced after eating traditional muffins. He grabbed his glucose meter and checked again. 93 milligrams per deciliter. Mark raised an eyebrow. A 12 milligrams per deciliter drop? Normally, after a meal, blood sugar rises slightly before tapering off. But here, instead of increasing, it had dropped almost immediately. This was not normal. He had never seen a muffin cause such a rapid decrease in blood sugar. 2 hours later, a shocking result. Still skeptical, Mark waited for the crucial 2-hour mark, the standard time frame to assess how food impacts blood sugar. If a food has a high glycemic index, blood sugar will spike significantly within the first hour before gradually coming down. If it has a low glycemic index, blood sugar may rise slightly or not at all. Mark took a deep breath, picked up his glucose meter, and checked. 80 milligrams per deciliter. He froze. From 105 milligrams per deciliter down to 80 milligrams per deciliter. A 25 milligrams per deciliter drop in just 2 hours. This was nearly impossible for any food containing flour, even if it was high in fiber. What just happened? Mark couldn't believe his eyes. He double-checked the reading. This wasn't a mistake. The muffin, a small, sugar-free, low-carb, fiber-rich muffin, had not only kept his blood sugar stable but had actually lowered it significantly. Was this an insulin response triggered by the sweetness of the muffin? Or did the fiber in lupin flour and flaxseed truly stabilize his blood sugar better than he had imagined? Mark didn't have all the answers. But one thing was certain. He had just discovered a game-changing recipe for blood sugar control that no other baked good had ever achieved before. 3. Why did blood sugar drop? Mark Reynolds stared at the blood glucose reading on his screen. 80 milligrams per deciliter. He frowned. This was strange. He hadn't taken any medication, nor had he exercised after his meal. So why did his blood sugar drop instead of rise? As someone living with type 2 diabetes, Mark understood that any food containing flour, whether whole grain, almond flour, or even high-fiber flour, could still raise blood sugar. But this time, it had dropped significantly. There had to be an explanation. First phase insulin response. The body was tricked. When Mark ate the muffin made from lupin flour and golden flaxseed, his body may have recognized it as a typical carbohydrate source. Even though the muffin contained no sugar, the sweet taste from the sugar-free sweetener might have triggered a natural reflex in his body. As soon as Mark chewed and swallowed, his brain sent signals to his pancreas, instructing it to produce insulin in anticipation of glucose entering the bloodstream. This is known as the first phase insulin response, a mechanism that occurs as soon as the body smells, tastes, or begins digesting sweet or starchy foods. Normally, if a food contains a significant amount of carbohydrates, the insulin released helps transport glucose into the cells, preventing blood sugar from rising too high. But in Mark's case, the muffin contained almost no digestible starch, meaning there wasn't much glucose for insulin to process. This could have led to a greater than usual drop in blood sugar. Mark recalled a scientific article he had read. Some people who consume sugar-free sweeteners experience a mild blood sugar drop after eating because their bodies produce insulin but lack enough glucose to balance it out. High fiber content slows glucose absorption and improves insulin sensitivity. Aside from the insulin response, another factor that may have helped lower Mark's blood sugar was the extremely high fiber content in lupin flour and flaxseed. Lupin flour, a superior fiber source. Mark knew that lupin flour was one of the highest fiber low-carb flour alternatives. 1/3 cup of lupin flour contains 14 grams of carbohydrates, but 12 grams of that is fiber, meaning only 2 grams of digestible starch is present. Fiber does not raise blood sugar because it isn't broken down into glucose. Instead, it slows the absorption of any sugar present in a meal, preventing blood sugar spikes. Golden flaxseed, fiber that supports insulin control. Golden flaxseed is also a superfood with an exceptionally high fiber content. 1 tablespoon contains 4 grams of carbohydrates, but all of it is fiber, meaning there is no digestible starch. Beyond slowing sugar absorption, flaxseed fiber offers another benefit: it improves insulin sensitivity. This means that Mark's body could use insulin more efficiently, helping him process glucose without needing excessive insulin production. Conclusion: the body reacts to food in unexpected ways. Mark started to understand. This muffin wasn't a magic pill that lowered blood sugar. Instead, a combination of 3 factors led to the drop. First phase insulin response: his body produced insulin, thinking he was consuming more carbohydrates than he actually was. High fiber content: this slowed down sugar absorption and helped his body use insulin more effectively. No digestible starch: with little glucose available, blood sugar naturally decreased instead of staying stable. Mark glanced at the muffin on his plate. He wasn't sure if everyone would react the same way he did. But one thing was certain: this was a recipe worth remembering and testing further. 4. Conclusion: Mark Reynolds set his glucose meter down on the table, staring at the 80 milligrams per deciliter reading one last time before exhaling in amazement. He had never seen a reaction like this before: a flour-based meal that caused his blood sugar to drop 25 milligrams per deciliter instead of rise. What does this mean? This recipe could help manage blood sugar. After everything he had experienced, Mark realized that this special muffin could be a useful tool for blood sugar control. With high fiber content from lupin flour and golden flaxseed, this recipe helps slow glucose absorption, reducing the risk of post-meal blood sugar spikes. This could be particularly beneficial for people with type 2 diabetes who need to regulate post-meal blood sugar levels, those on a low-carb or keto diet who need to keep glucose stable to avoid disrupting ketosis, anyone looking to improve insulin sensitivity and reduce insulin resistance over time. While Mark couldn't guarantee this recipe would work for everyone, it had undeniably worked for him. A 25 milligrams per deciliter drop is unusual, but logical. Normally, after a flour-based meal, even a low-carb one, blood sugar would either rise slightly or remain stable, but not drop significantly. However, in Mark's case, this drop could be explained by 2 key factors. First phase insulin response: his body recognized the texture and sweetness as starchy food, triggering insulin release. But since this muffin had almost no digestible starch, the excess insulin may have caused an unexpected blood sugar drop. Extremely high fiber content: fiber from lupin flour and flaxseed not only slowed glucose absorption but also improved insulin sensitivity, leading to a significant blood sugar reduction. Is this a long-term solution? Mark understood that everyone's body reacts differently to food. This time, the muffin lowered his blood sugar. But if he repeated the experiment, would he get the same results? The only way to know was through personal testing. If you want to try this recipe, monitor your blood sugar before and after eating to see how your body responds. A discovery worth exploring. Mark smiled, picked up the remaining muffin, and took a small bite. Maybe he had just found a way to enjoy baked goods while keeping blood sugar in check. And for someone who had lived with diabetes for over 10 years, this wasn't just a muffin, it was a small breakthrough in his personal health journey. Will you dare to try? Mark tried, and the results shocked him. A small muffin, sugar-free, flour-free, yet it lowered his blood sugar by 25 milligrams per deciliter in just 2 hours. Was this just luck, or is there really a formula for blood sugar control that we've overlooked? Now, the question is, will you dare to experiment? Make this muffin yourself. Check your blood sugar before eating, then 1 hour later, and again after 2 hours. Will you experience a surprising drop like Mark, or will your body respond differently? There's only one way to find out: try it today. And don't forget to share your results, because who knows? This could be the breakthrough that helps thousands of people manage their blood sugar better.